Joining me now is one of the two lawmakers who proposed that bill, California Congressman Ted Lieu. He is a member of the Judiciary and Foreign Affairs Committees, and it's awfully good to see you, as always, my friend. So you say you are introducing this legislation because during his first presidency, Trump abused the security clearance process by appointing members of his own family to senior staff positions and gave staffers and family members access to classified information despite serious objections by career staff. What powers does your bill give Congress and the DOJ to guarantee appointees are properly vetted, and which current Trump picks are you particularly concerned about? Big question. Take it away.
Thank you, Alex, for your question. I'm honored to co-lead this legislation by Congressman Don Beyer, and our legislation will require FBI background checks for employees of the Executive Office of the President. These are high-level officials, and traditionally in both Democratic and Republican administrations, with the exception of Trump administration, people have gone through FBI background checks. And if the incoming administration doesn't want to do this, then we have to ask, what are they hiding from the American people? Why don't they want these high-level appointees to go through the standard FBI background check? This is good governance. It shouldn't even be a partisan issue. It's simply common sense.
Listen, it was a big question. Are there specific names that you're particularly focused upon? Because you're like, they need FBI clearance.
Well, I'll just give you some examples of positions in the White House. They're, first of all, very high level because they have a direct line to the president. But you have folks like the Office of Management and Budget, who you highlighted earlier, the trade ambassador. There's lots of folks who work right near the president, and you would want them to have an FBI background check. So it is a lot of people in the White House, and this is basically a common sense bill. And it shouldn't be partisan because both administrations of both parties have been doing this for decades.
Shouldn't be partisan, but does this bill have any chance of advancing in the Republican-controlled Congress? And if it gets passed, can President-elect Trump override the FBI's recommendation?
Well, certainly the president has veto power. However, the U.S. Congress is going to be closely divided. We have essentially a bigger Democratic set of members at the beginning of next term than we had at the beginning of this term. And it's going to be a very divided Congress. And if some Republicans join this common sense bill, then we're going to be able to pass it off the House floor.
All right, let's look at Trump's pick for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Besides being underqualified for overseeing a bureaucracy of more than 2 million personnel, he does stand accused of sexually assaulting a woman in 2017. Now, again, he denies any wrongdoing, but acknowledges paying her to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And this is on top of his opposition to women serving in combat roles and discussing in one of his books the prospect of violent civil war against the left. So what do you see as being the dangers of Pete Hegseth leading the Pentagon? And do you expect enough Senate Republicans to vote against confirming him?
Mr. Hegseth has very extreme views. This police report is public. I encourage people to go read it. What the report documents is that Hegseth was visibly intoxicated at a hotel bar. He was already acting inappropriately towards a number of women. And then the report talks about how the alleged victim alleges a sexual assault at his hotel room later that evening. It is a big red flag that he then paid the woman money and had her sign a non-disclosure agreement. I urge the U.S. Senate to carefully review that police report and to ask all the appropriate questions. And then just in terms of qualifications, the Department of Defense is one of the largest employers in the world at over 2.9 million employees. Hegseth has virtually no management experience. He's never led any organization at scale. Being a Fox TV personality is a very different skill set than running one of the most important and largest organizations in America, the Department of Defense.
Yeah, let's stick with the DOD, because NBC News reports that President-elect Trump plans to sign up to 5 executive orders addressing illegal immigration and signaled that he will use the U.S. military to help carry out the largest deportation in U.S. history. What are your biggest concerns about this, how it would be done? And what is your reaction to Trump's pick for border czar Tom Homan, who has promised shock and awe on day one and threatened sanctuary cities who don't cooperate?
The United States military can be used to help with borders, right? We can prevent foreigners from entering our borders with the United States military. But to then go within the borders and enforce essentially what's domestic law for deportations, my view is that violates the Policy Comitatus Act, which is existing federal law that prevents the U.S. military from being used for domestic law enforcement functions. So I don't believe that that will be constitutional. That will be litigated in the courts. But both Democratic and Republican administrations have used U.S. military personnel and assets to help secure our borders. So that is something that certainly the incoming president can do if he wants to.
Let's pivot a bit, because this week Russia escalated tensions with the West, firing a new experimental ballistic missile at Ukraine, and it has the capability of carrying multiple nuclear warheads. Russia's also lowered the threshold for its use of nuclear weapons, and this is after the Biden administration allowed Ukraine to use U.S.-made long-range weapons inside of Russia. President-elect Trump has vowed to very swiftly end the conflict when he takes office. Whether he's able to do it, we'll see. But with Russia gaining the upper hand on the battlefield, what are your concerns for Ukraine with Trump about to take office, and what could a Trump-brokered deal with Vladimir Putin look like?
I urge Russia to de-escalate. They should not be targeting civilian infrastructure. And at the same time, we need to make sure that Ukraine has everything they need to continue to defend themselves against an illegal Russia invasion. I also note that Russia worked with North Korea. Now they're North Korean troops. They're fighting against Ukrainians, and that is an unnecessary escalation. So I urge both Russia and North Korea to de-escalate, and for the United States and NATO to continue to give Ukraine what it needs to defend itself against Russian aggression.
All right. California Representative Ted Lieu, it's always good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.